of the things that's fascinating people is her visit to La Brisa. La Brisa, which was common for trolley companies, at the end of their line, the furthest out, they would have an amusement center. Happened in a lot of places. I guess the most famous one was Coney Island in New York City, which was an amusement place. And the trolley made money because you had to pay to ride the trolley to get out there. Probably the highest fare. And the trolley was only a few cents to ride on it, depending on where you rode and so forth. But anyway, La Brisa was a center at the end of Symington Street on the ocean, actually where the Reach Hotel is now. And it was an open air, closed in. And I don't think there at that time there was normally any admission charge to La Brisa, but they did have probably a concession stand, and of course you had to get out there by riding the trolley. And they had live music, and that was it. If you wanted live music, you had to go somewhere, because there was no recordings, of course, no records, no radio. You had to make your own music, which she got a piano. Somebody gave her a piano, and evidently she could play the piano. Or you went to La Brisa, where they had music and you could dance, and families would go out there and have a family picnic, spend the day at La Brisa. Her family has a picnic at one time, and they all go out there. It's interesting that the Key West at the time, the population was about probably almost equal Anglo and Hispanic. And she had very little dealing that we can see with Hispanics, except at La Brisa sometimes they would be playing music, but she would still go dance with them. Now she did have acquaintance with Miguel, followed early on, and whatever reason, Mother did not like Miguel, probably because he was Hispanic, but I don't know. But they had some arguments about Miguel early on. Then he sort of fades away. But he is at La Brisa a couple of times. In fact, one time he's out there tuning the piano, so he had some talent. But there's so many unanswered questions. She don't answer all our questions for today. She did go to a couple of times to the San Carlos, which was Hispanic school, and they had entertainment. They had live entertainment, but she only went there twice that I found. One time was the Douglas School graduation. She attended that at here, and then she went to some event held at San Carlos. So I don't think at the time, this is the time of vaudeville where traveling groups, people would come and perform. And San Carlos had a regular schedule, but it was all in Spanish. And later on, there was the Oddfellows here in Key West had a vaudeville type for English, but it doesn't seem to be in operation during this year, or she didn't get to go. But the La Brisa was, of course, the center of her entertainment life throughout the diary, as you can see, and she meets all sorts of interesting people there, plus all the military officers. The Navy ships were coming in, and she meets a lot of the officers. The battleship Maine, which of course is going to change the world in '98 when it's destroyed, comes in for shakedown this year, and she meets some of the officers. And I know a couple of the names that she met. They survived the destruction in Maine. And one of them was a Marine officer that went on later, was a Marine Corps general in the World War I. So she does get to meet some people outside of one. She meets a doctor who doesn't speak English. I'm guessing he's Spanish, that follows her around and watches her every move. And she eventually, I don't know, talks to him or communicates with him some way. I don't know. He comes to her house to call, so it's interesting place, and the people she meets, and everybody goes there. One of the things that's come up, they say about her, but one of the big rows she had with her mother was she went to, I think, Larissa without an escort, and she was not allowed to go out unless she had a chaperone with her. Had to have one of her brothers or sister or somebody to chaperone her. She was not allowed to go out alone. The only time she even gets to sit alone with any guy is Everett's, her boyfriend, and the thing. He comes to visit, and they get time alone in the parlor. So she did have a chaperone, somebody watching her at all times, because the mother and her have a big row over that. Of course, her family was the mother. It's interesting. Now, her father's dead. He was a physician or a pharmacist, probably both, from Nassau. We found very little on him. He died young, and of course he would have had to been, if he was from Nassau, he would have had to probably gone to school in England or Scotland, because Nassau, Bahamas, never large enough to have any formal college or at that time, or any particularly a medical school. So her father's out of it. Her mother, of course, he is one of the 7 Watlington daughters. We see her mother often. Her mother evidently throughout the diary is doing something, but we don't find out what kind of work she has, if she has any work. She's always involved somewhere, coming home and so forth, but it doesn't. She never tells us, and from the records we have, we can't find out. She has a sister, Lena. Now, Lena, we know of, is the older sister of his. Lena never marries. She makes her living throughout her life making candy, hard candy, and baking cakes and so forth. But Lena has a distinction, and she works with the Boy Scouts as a Boy Scout mother, and gets enough following that in 1927 she becomes the first woman to hold an elected position in the county. She's elected to the city commission and holds it for 2 years, but the old boys then raise up and get her out of there after 2 years. But we know about Lena from that. Her and Lena seem to have had a couple of run-ins in the diary, but there is a number of entries where she's making candy. May's making candy. I don't know. She says made candy. I assume she's making it with Lena, but she don't ever say. So it's interesting relationship, because one time she says Lena's lying about her, told her mother lies and stuff in the diary. So, but anyway, Lena goes on and lives her whole life in Key West. Her other sister is Fanny, or Frances, and she marries Cole, C-O-L-E. Now, to make things confusion enough, we have these 7 sisters we're following. Now, Cole's brother marries one of her cousins from another Watlington sister. So that adds another level of confusion. The 2 Cole brothers marry cousins. But anyway, Fanny is, she visits Fanny's and often. And both the Coles go on living in South Florida, most of them. I know there's descendants from Coles in the Miami and the Southwest Florida both. The interesting thing that happens in the diary is Franny, or Frances, finds a baby on her front porch one morning. Now that was I said, no, that rat hole, I'm not going down that rat hole and try to find out what happened to the baby. there's a baby there, and where did it come from? And so she takes it in, and I don't know what happened to it after that. Somebody that's got a lot of time and a lot of energy can pursue the baby. And the Cole brothers and their daughter, one of the Coles, are very involved in politics, but they both leave Key West during the Depression. The other one is her brother, Earl. Earl is her brother, and she's often involved with Earl. He's throughout the diary, and he's the guy that takes her to La Brisa a lot and is her escort and so forth. Unfortunately, Earl is killed in an industrial accident. He's working for the electric company, and he's killed at age 28. And he has a son that's not born. He's been married and has a son that's born after he dies, who's also named Earl Saunders Johnson. And evidently later in life, well, throughout maybe his life, May seems to be close to him and with him throughout his life. The other brother, Charles, seems like a normal life, and he dies in Tampa later on as I think 70 years old. So he's younger, so he doesn't play as much part in the diary as Earl does. Earl's always around.